This is Books for Breakfast, a podcast where we talk about books and writing. I'm Enda Wiley.
And I'm Peter Sirr.
And you're all very welcome to this morning's show. And welcome to Books for Breakfast, Christmas Bumper Special. Peter and I are very excited about it. We have not one but two toaster challenges on today. We're going to have special guests, Paula Meehan and Bergin, two poets coming in to rise to the toaster challenge. So delighted that they're coming in. We're also going to have contributions from poets Noel Duffy and James Harper, and also new poems by debut poets Aoife O'Reilly and Ethna Hand. Looking forward to it. We'd also like to say as well, many thanks to all our listeners who've been tuning in since July. We've been on the go since then, and thank you so much. We've been enjoying ourselves, and we hope you've been enjoying Books for Breakfast too. So onwards to our Christmas bumper special.
The Journey East, Winter 2010. The car revving up, the three of us wiping mist away to find a whiter world. Black ice to Clonakilty, cortege of cars behind a spectral hearse. Strings of lights in Bandon, sapphire cold, and the stars are moving through the river. On Cork's Victorian viaduct, a train made of snow. We steam below the River Lee. Cork city crusts behind us. Three swans on slatty water, feathery ice. The sun's last X-ray radiates the trees. Lights turn red in Castle Martyr. Diesel slush road. Across the black water, Waterford has drifted white. Inching mile by mile through Iceland, Greenland, Wexford, another country. Dungarvan's glittery square, each shop an advent calendar window. Rosslare night, chalet on a ghostly estate, sound of wind in chimney. Dawn ferry, sudden vibrations, propellers churn the sea to snow. The swells swing up and down and up. Oh, let the voyage finish now and grant us solid earth. From Pembroke, Wales unfolds in white. A postbox in a wall, red as a berry. Below the Severn Bridge, water turned to bone. The Somerset levels, crisp and even. The motorway accelerates the dark. The night re-icing the Yeovil Road. Not now, we're nearly there. Cattystock lumped with snow. Wood incense, curtains edged with gold. A house on Duck Street, an outdoor light, a star that stopped overhead.
And that was James Harper reading his poem, The Journey East, from his book of poems, The White Silhouette, published by Carcanet Press. It's poetry which balances his explorations of the mystical with more intimate experiences and journeys. He really is the finest of poets. In fact, The Guardian has said of his work that it is strongly imbued with a sense of the sacred, makes great play of light spiritual resonance. And certainly his poem that you've just heard seems a perfect way to start this, our Books for Breakfast Christmas show. And here on this festive show, we'd love to talk about books of 2020, books of the year that we've really loved. And to help us with this, we'd like to welcome our guest, the poet Tara Bergin, who is joining us to share a poem she likes and also to talk about a book that she has loved this year. But just to say a few things about Tara, Tara was born in 1974. She grew up in Dublin. She moved to England in 2002. And by 2012, she was awarded her PhD from Newcastle University with a thesis on Ted Hughes's translations of Janusz Polinsky. Tara now lives in Yorkshire. She won the Seamus Heaney First Collection Prize in 2014 with her collection This Is Yarrow. In 2014, she was also named a Next Generation Poet by the Poetry Book Society. Her second collection, The Tragic Death of Eleanor Marx, was shortlisted for the T.S. Eliot Prize and the Poetry Now Award. Tara is currently part-time lecturing in creative writing and poetry in Newcastle University. And Tara, you are very welcome.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
For the Christmas special. And how have you been getting on, Tara, over in Newcastle?
Not too bad. Well, I actually haven't been in Newcastle. I've been doing all of my lecturing via Zoom. So that's been the usual strange experience. So but it's not too bad where I live kind of in a very remote part of the Yorkshire Dales. So it has its good sides and its bad sides, but I do miss home and I'll be sad not to be able to get back this Christmas.
Oh, yeah. It's really nice to hear your voice and to have you on our Christmas special. But to start off with, Peter, I'm going to turn to you first. And I know that you've been reading tons of books this year, but what particular books did you love in 2020?
I always find it really hard when I'm asked to choose something. What's your favorite book? First of all, I have to try and remember what did I actually read. And so I have to, because I have a terrible memory. I can't retain stuff. But I came down to, in the end, like I've just got I've got a couple of books because in the end, when people ask stuff like this, I nearly always go with whatever I happen to be reading at the moment and enjoying. And so I'm going to take the lazy man's way out of the task and just mention what I've been reading. I suppose that the two of them are poetry related. One is Elaine Ní Chuileán's collected poems, which came out this year, and which obviously we were involved in launching. And, it's a big, thick, chunky book that has all of her collections in it. And it's just a great chance to revisit old favorites, like Swineherd, Acts and Monuments, Odysseus, Pygmalion's Image, from the Magdalene Sermon, all these kind of collections, The Brazen Serpent, The Sunfish, The Boys of Blue Hill, poems like Fireman's Lift or The Sister, and all of those ones that we kind of looked at. So that's one definite, and all those wonderful late poems in it as well. So that was one of my kind of choices for this year. The other one, and I know because, Tara, you're in this as well. I'm an anthology kind of nut. I love anthologies. I buy every kind of anthology known to man, anything and everything. But I love all the Blood Axe anthologies, the ones from Staying Alive and Being Alive and all that. But that whole series, and there was a new one of those that came out this year, which was called Staying Human, new poems for that project Life for Staying Alive. And I always love books like this because the reason that anthologies are interesting, I suppose, is because they're all about surprise. It's all about the stuff you don't know, you've never heard of before, and suddenly you're introduced to a voice. These anthologies generally have voices from all over the world, so they're great like that as well. I opened the book and there's a poem by Pessoa, who will be speaking later, and poems by Thomas Kinsley have Mirror in February, but it's bumped up against a poem by Charles Simic about mirrors. And there's a whole section on the strange kind of time that we live in now as well. So it's kind of up to the minute. And I know because it's hard for publishers to publish anthologies. These are big, expensive projects. And, so I think it's always worthy of support. So I would recommend that, Staying Human, new poems for Staying Alive.
Really good choice, Peter. But I agree with you. Elaine Ní Chuileán's collected poems and the Blood Axe anthology, Staying Human, absolutely brilliant. So thanks for that, Peter. You've been reading loads. We're going to move on to Tara, I think. And Tara, you have a really, really great book you love by a poet that Peter and I are both fans of. Would you like to tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, I've chosen the Book of Disquiet by Fernando Pessoa, written in the early 20th century. And I will tell you a little bit about it, but I'm not sure whether I'm being timed yet. I know you've got the toast ready to go, so I don't want to
I know, yeah. I just hope
here. I'm ready for my 3 minutes. I've got it all set. So you can tell me when I'm ready, when I should start.
Okay, Tara, we're ready for you. We'll count you in. 1, 2, 3.
Right. Well, this is not a novel. It's not a diary. It's not a factual documentary. It's not a group of short stories, but it's like all of these things. For years, I was afraid to read it because the title was so good. I couldn't bear for the words inside not to live up to it. I didn't even mind not reading it. The title seemed enough for me. But then earlier this year, I took it down off the shelf and just opened it randomly at the middle of the book. And what I saw was not what I'd been expecting. It looked like a series of numbered diary entries, some half a page long, some only 3 lines long. And I read one and I was even more frightened, but in a different way because it was too good. It was better than I'd hoped. I opened it again at a different part and read another short entry, and I thought, what is this? It felt almost like I'd discovered some unknown manuscript that had lain hidden for half a century. What I know now is that that's exactly what I was reading. Pessoa had gathered thousands of scraps of paper on which he'd written these short fragments over a period of about 20 years and kept them all in a couple of trunks. Only after his death were they discovered and deciphered and published in various different orders and translations. So my dipping in at random was, it turns out, the perfect way to read these writings. I've since tried reading it like a normal book from the beginning to the end, but it doesn't work that way. This is like a magic book that you need to approach unlike any other. Reviews have compared it to Rilke, Mandelstam, Borges, Calvino, Rousseau. I would add Kafka, Gogol, Dostoevsky, maybe even Oscar Wilde. To give you a taste of it, here's entry number 113 describing the weather. A rainy day. The air is a concentrated yellow, like a pale yellow seen through a grubby white. Or here's number 114 on the pleasure of having a mild fever. Give me that state of tremulous, broken passivity in which I glimpse visions. Or here he is later on talking about relationships. We can die of loving too meanly. At a time when travel is difficult, this book transports you to the squares of Lisbon in the spring, the fruit sellers on the street, a woman dropping a clay flower pot from a balcony. I've found that quite often I'll close this book immediately after reading just one short section to allow me to stand back and revel in it. I don't agree with everything it says, but the speaker is so socially maladjusted and exists in such utter intensity, what he describes as the shrill whistle of naked anxiety, that I can't help but feel close to him. To sum up, in Pessoa's own words, his diary wounds me personally. Or, in the words of one reviewer of the book, there's no one like him, apart from all of us. How's the toast doing? Is it ready?
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was brilliant.
Yeah, great choice. And as you say, almost not a book. And you can't read it as a book. You can't kind of, or at least I couldn't. I mean, you can't begin on page 1 and read straight through to page whatever, 403, because it's the kind of thing that you dip into it, don't you?
You do. Well, that's it. I did try because I felt disingenuous almost the way I was reading at first. Like I didn't really get it or I wasn't paying it enough attention. So I thought I must start from the beginning, go to the end. And it wasn't at all the same. It wasn't nearly as good an experience almost. It was just wrong. Yeah. And in fact, I discovered online somebody has done a box version of it. Did you see that? It's from somewhere called the Half Pint Press, who works using a letterpress, and they've actually made it back into a box. They've translated it, but all on little fragments again, found objects, matchboxes and bus tickets and stuff. And I'd love to read that because I think that's exactly what this book should be. It's like rummaging through a box and you pull out these little bits of...
And that's how it was, wasn't it?
That's how it was, yeah.
That's how it was composed, and it was a box. Because it's one of these... Like, I don't know if you're a big fan of Pessoa in general and all of the different Pessoas, the different kind of heteronyms and the book of Disquiet is Bernardo Soares. It's this kind of creature that he invents in order to write that. And he's one of the greatest of all of the characters that he invents.
He's certainly my favourite. And I was pleased to discover that was the one that Pessoa said was most like him. And I don't know why I was pleased, but I don't know, that comforted me somehow.
Yeah, it is very close to him. I mean, sometimes it's kind of bleak. Like it's full of things like sense of kind of terrible loneliness sometimes. We never love anyone, he says. Yeah. We never know anyone enough to love them, or to write is to forget. I write to forget about life, he says at one point, which is a great kind of thing in a ways, but it's full of...
Yeah, but that's brilliant. Isn't that the bit that comes after he can't bring himself to buy the bananas from the street seller because he's worried he might ask for the wrong thing or say it in the wrong way. And it just reminded me of, well, maybe not everyone has this, but that feeling
Yeah.
sometimes of being socially inadequate, where you go through all this thing in your head, like, I'd love to go up to the street sellers and ask for the fruit like they do
Yeah.
in a film, but what if I ask wrong, or what if they give me too much and I can't afford it, and all these. And I just love that terrible existential angst that means eventually he decides he won't buy the bananas, but he might next time.
I mean, because he says, like, I'm astonished whenever I finish something, you know. That sense, whether it's a poem or a work like this, that sense of that he has brought himself to complete something, or I'm beginning to know myself, I don't exist. You know, does he really actually exist?
It's definitely a very weird character that he's presenting.
Yeah.
And, you know, as I said, it's not like you go with, I mean, there's a bit of a few dodgy bits about advice for married women, which I wasn't sure about. But, you know, that's kind of not the point, is it? It's just about that this character and all his sufferings are there. And
Yeah.
I just warmed to that. It's just not like, you know, it's just not like anything else,
Yeah.
you know.
It's so mysterious, isn't it?
It is so mysterious. And as I say, it glimmers there on the shelf, as I said, and, you know, and it's almost, do you dare?
I brought it with me on holidays this summer, and it was up on the mantelpiece, and I said, I'm going to read this. I'm going to read the whole of the Book of Disquiet, and it kind of lay there, and it didn't. Yeah, I dipped into it. I had another much shorter one that an American publisher brought out of his selected prose years ago, and I kind of dipped into that a bit. Really, that got me to kind of look back into it. And you know, now I think I will definitely go and read more of it, and definitely recommend it to anyone else. I mean, I think that was a really interesting choice.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you very much.
It even got Peter. Peter was translating him the other day as well, so you really inspired him, Tara. So, can I have my turn now, Peter?
Enda, what about you? What did you like? I mean, you have been reading, and I have to say, because you're a much better and more consistent reader than I am.
Oh, I'm being complimented now, Tara. Well, actually, yeah. Well, I'm going to break things because I know we've all been talking about poetry, but I love reading fiction as well. And we've had so many great writers on this year on Books for Breakfast. I'm thinking of Christine Dwyer Hickey, and we've talked about so many novelists and different people. But one book that we didn't talk about, Peter, was Donal Ryan's Strange Flowers. I don't know, Tara, if you've read it at all, but
not yet, no, but I'm going to after this program.
Okay. Well, it is a really beautiful, I found it to be such a beautiful, empathetic read. And actually, I felt very justified because just a few days ago, it won this year's Novel of the Year at the Irish Book Awards. And it's set in 1973, a period which I really liked in the book, actually. And there's a character called Moll Gladney. She's an only child. She leaves her parents, Paddy and Kit, and she takes a bus from their really rural home and she disappears. And Donal Ryan is really good at the first section of the book at describing the loneliness of her parents. I mean, I've a child, just one child, I know you do as well, Tara, but can you imagine them just disappearing and you don't hear from them or see them for 5 years, and they're aging parents, and then she suddenly returns with somebody. And I don't want to give it away, but it's somebody who changes all their lives forever. And I think it's such an excellent book at exploring loss and loneliness. And ultimately, I suppose, the miraculous power of love. And above all, I love this book because it's exquisitely written. I found it to be a very moving book at a really deep level. There's nothing throwaway about this book at all. And I think the secret is in the language that he uses. He's a really true writer. And this is a book to really enjoy, I think, over the Christmas seasons. And it was one of my, I think, favourite novels of the year. Just to begin with this tiny bit at the beginning, Peter, I won't go on for too long, I promise, but it does give you a sense of his really, really, really excellent writing style. All the light left Paddy Gladney's eyes when his daughter disappeared. All the gladness went from his heart. His days had always been so full of peace. Before Moll went, he pedalled around the parish in the mornings with the post, and he herded and foddered in the afternoons on the farm where he was caretaker, and he walked the fences and checked the gaps and gates, and his wife Kit kept house in their small, tidy cottage, and she did the books for a few local business people. And his daughter, his only child, went to school and learnt her lessons, and they knelt every night before bed for the rosary, all three of them. And they'd a radio and a dresser and a yard of hens and a green and yielding world around them in every direction. And it goes on. And it's very simple, but it's very effective prose. Yeah, it really
Beautiful.
is beautiful. And like, that's the first paragraph. I always think if the first paragraph gets you, you're right in there. So that's,
Yeah. Even that opening
yeah,
line was beautifully
yeah, it
written,
is
wasn't
very
it?
beautiful. So that's my choice, and it's just one book. But I'm going to move on, Tara, to you, because I know that you really kindly recorded a poem for us this season by a poet that you admire, the poet Anne Carson. And I'm just wondering, is she a poet that you've always liked?
I came late to Anne Carson, but like lots of things, I seem to come very late to. And, you know, people would be talking about her and I'd kind of pretend I knew who they meant. And and really bits and pieces come my way, or I discover things, or somebody recommends a poem. So I don't have an extensive knowledge of her work, but kind of I think everything I read by her I think is great, which is always a good sign, you know. So I dipping into anything I can find.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thanks so much for, you've recorded a lovely little snippet where you talk about this poem. It's God's Christ Theory, and it's from Glass, Irony and God. It's published by New Directions. Isn't that right, Tara?
Yes, and they're a brilliant press, and in fact, they're the ones who published the Pessoa book that I was talking about. It's just a particularly beautiful edition as well, hardback edition. So look into anything by New Directions Press is probably going to be good.
Okay, that's brilliant. So we're going to put this on now. This is Tara. She's going to introduce and read Anne Carson's poem, God's Christ Theory, from Glass, Irony and God, published by New Directions.
I chose to read this poem because it's very nice to read aloud. It's quick, it's got a strong voice, and I like the way it shifts from intellectual to casual. Also, Anne Carson uses full stops like no one else, which means she can get away with clauses as short as one word. That instruction at the middle of the poem to translate, to remind ourselves of the sources of words and beliefs, seems to me important, especially during these days of risky, tempting materialism. This poem is like a code. It appears small and slight, but it transmits a useful message. God's Christ Theory by Anne Carson. God has no emotions, but wished temporarily to move in man's mind as if he did. Christ. Not passion, but compassion. Com means with. What kind of withness would that be? Translated. I have a friend named Jesus, from Mexico. His father and grandfather are called Jesus too. They account me a fool with my questions about salvation. They say they are saving to move to Los Angeles.
And that was Tara Bergin reading Anne Carson's God's Christ Theory, a poem from Glass, Irony and God, published by New Directions. Tara also spoke about Fernando Pessoa's book, The Book of Disquiet, translated from the Portuguese by Margaret Joel Costa in an edition by New Directions, which came out in 2017. Many thanks to Tara Bergin for coming into Books for Breakfast, and happy Christmas to you, Tara. And thanks to Peter too for his choice of books, Elaine Quillinon's Collected Poems, published by Gallery Press just this year, and the new Bloodex anthology, Staying Human. Details of all these books and Donal Ryan's Strange Flowers, published just this year as well by Doubleday, will be available on our website www.booksforbreakfast.buzzsprout.com. Well, Peter, it's been an absolutely brilliant year for debut poetry collections, and a new book just out is Aoife Riley's Revolutions of Humming Things. It's published by Dura Press, and I'd like to say as well congratulations this year to Dura, as they're celebrating 10 years of publications of poets and writers such as Anne-Marie Huron, Simon Lewis, Amanda Bell, John O'Donnell, Madeline Darcy. And about Aoife O'Reilly, she grew up in Laois. She now lives in Kinvara, Galway. She's a poet widely published, and her pamphlet Lilac and Gooseberries was published by Lapwing Press in 2017. These poems in her new book, her debut collection Revolution of Humming Things, combine joy and conflict, I think, really seamlessly, and they position themselves in what Aoife herself calls, in one poem, the worlds of now and then. Here's Aoife. She's reading The Blue Bicycle from her new and first collection, Revolutions of Humming Things.
This poem is called The Blue Bicycle, and it's inspired by that freewheeling feeling of childhood summertime. Nothing has guided me through life like my blue bicycle, teaching me about the edge, How to fall off the map and into nettles, my 8-year-old Wales where I heard the first sound of my own cry, realised the world is not flat. Since then I've pedalled in and out of disasters, learned about the farthest reaches, fields beyond the fields, great downhills, no hands, secret hideouts within and without. We still follow midsummer across the fields, watch the clouds throw themselves over our long shadows, freewheel through winking poppies, seeds bursting till the horizon swings around to meet us. And the revolutions of humming things remind me how everything goes back to the beginning.
Another new and debut collection is Ethna Hand's poetry book Fox Trousers. Brilliant title, actually, and it's just published by Salmon Books. Ethna has had a varied and interesting career. She worked full-time in RTE TV and radio for 20 years until 2007. She's also written and directed 3 radio plays broadcast on RTE Radio 1, and her documentary Voice Jazz won a Prix Italia for Best Work on Music. She was head of RTE Radio from 2003 to 2006, and Ethna now works independently with RTE Lyric FM on its weekly poetry feature, Poetry File. She also worked with Gay Byrne for the final 4 years of his Sunday Jazz programme. As a theatre producer, she tours the one-man shows The Man in the Woman's Shoes and I Hear You and Rejoice, both written and performed by Michael Murphy. Congratulations to Ethna on this, her first book of poetry. And here she is, introducing her poem, My Contagious Sister, from Fox Trousers, her new collection.
The poem I'm going to read is from a collection called Fox Trousers, which Salmon Press are publishing around now, as in the week or 2 weeks before Christmas. And it's been deferred since June, so it's a very 2020 experience, I know, for a lot of people. It's not so much a Christmas poem or a winter poem, although the scenario could well happen on Christmas Day in many places. But it is a poem that I wrote back in April for my sister, who I'm very close to, and she was celebrating a big roundy birthday, and of course none of us could be physically with her, so we were all dealing with that kind of distance and also trying to be cheerful. So the poem is called My Contagious Sister, for Una. Will you two just stop and we'd try, focusing on the Sunday roast, peas and potatoes. But the lure of the laugh, unbridled as a wild pony, reeled us back in. I'd glance, and you were pure gone, then so was I. A fit of the giggles rising through our small bodies, shoulders shaking, eyes streaming, noses bubbling. I caught from you, my giggling sister, an incurable love of laughter.
And we'd like to finish this section of our Christmas bumper special with the poet Noel Duffy reading a poem, Daybreak, from his new collection, Streetlight Amber. A lover returns after a 3-year absence, and so begins the slow process of rebuilding the relationship against the backdrop of the city in these well-crafted, meditative poems. Previous collections by Noel include In the Library of Lost Objects, On Light and Carbon, and Summer Rain. Lovers of poetry won't be disappointed by this book, as Poetry Ireland Review said. He exhibits only the good stuff, the best work. There's no small talk, no gimmicks, nothing insincere. He just gets down to the heart of things and gives us poems that matter. So here's Noel reading Daybreak from Streetlight Amber, published by Wardwood Publishing this year.
Daybreak. I wake to a sense of forgetfulness, casually reaching to your side of the bed to remember it empty. I mourn for the world I thought existed, the promise of us. I go back to a moment before I met you. I walked across a field and looked up. I saw the sky above me and I was ecstatic to be living, to stare up and have my heart blown open to the colour of the midday blue, there in the lazy heat of the summer afternoon. This I learned from you also, though bodily at your hands, and you at mine. How love's gifts and judgments are beyond our knowledge and will outlive our longing. I get up finally and go to the basin, wash my face clean to the cold comfort of water. Towel draw my jaw and hold my stare. This the daybreak hour.
The leaving. He had fallen so far down into himself I couldn't reach him. Though I had arranged our escape, he wouldn't budge. He sat days in his room, checking manuscripts or fixing photos of his family strictly in the order they were taken. I begged him hurry, for the moonless nights were due. It was 2 nights' walk through the forest. The soldiers had recently entered our quarter. I dreaded each knock on the door, their heavy boots on the stairs. Our friends advised haste. Many neighbours were already in prison. His eyes were twin suns burning. Silence was his answer to my pleas. I packed a change of clothes, half the remaining rations, my mother's gold ring for barter. The documents at a glance would pass. It wasn't for myself I went, but for the new life I carried. At the frontier I recalled him that last morning by the window watching the sun strut the length of the street, mirroring the clouds parade. He wore the black shirt I'd embroidered with stars and said, "Nothing, nothing." Then the guide pushed me forward. Between one sweep of the searchlight and the next, I slipped into another state, gratefully, under cover of darkness.
Oh, thank you, Paula Meehan. That was the very first poem, The Leaving, in As If by Magic, selected poems by Paula Meehan, just published by Daedalus Press. Well, Paula Meehan is one of Ireland's foremost and most distinctive poets. She was born in Dublin in the North Inner City and now lives in Baldoyle with her partner, the poet Theo Dorgan. Educated at Trinity College Dublin and also in the US at Eastern Washington University, Paula has published 7 collections of poetry, including The Man Who Was Marked by Winter, Pillow Talk, Dharmakaya, and Painting Rain. 2016 brought the publication of her collection Geomantic, which received a Chumley Award. Paula's poems are clear-sighted, uncompromising, politically brave, and astute on issues of gender and class. They are immersed in the city of Dublin that she loves. They are also instinctive and celebratory in their responses to the natural world. Hers is a vision that above all bears witness to being alive, and she is a poet truly grateful for this gift. Not surprisingly, her poetry has received popular and critical acclaim, and it's gained an enormous reputation both nationally and internationally. Her poetry has been translated into many languages, and she's received lots of awards, including the Butler Literary Award for Poetry, presented by the Irish American Cultural Institute, the Martin Toner Award for Literature, the Dennis Devlin Award, many awards, the Larsa Shaughnessy Award for poetry. She's also been awarded the PPI Award for radio drama, and a collection of her radio work, Music for Dogs, was published by Daedalus Press. In 1996, she was elected to Aosdána, the Irish Affiliation of Artists, and Paula was Ireland Professor of Poetry from 2013 to 2016. And this year, Paula's selected poems, As If by Magic, which we just heard from there, was published in October by Daedalus Press. Paula Meehan, you are very welcome to Books for Breakfast and this, our Christmas special.
Thanks very much. Or how are you doing yourself?
We're all well. We're very happy to see you and to hear you today. It's a lovely start to the morning. Well, Paula, just to start, not only are you that rare thing, I think anyway, a true and real poet, you're also a really talented painter. And this selected comes with a vibrant and elegant cover of 4 waiting birds painted by your good self. And I was wondering, could you talk a little bit about these birds you painted, why you chose them for the cover, and also the magic of your title, As If by Magic, which seems to me to reflect so much of the spirit of the poems in this book?
Well, the painting, yeah, I suppose, like that was painted a long time ago. It's really done as a very quick birthday card for my friend's son when he was 4 years of age, and he's 16 now, so based on a North African panel, an enamelled panel, and I thought the flux of fire in enameling might just come out in watercolour. So it was a very quick thing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And Paula, just as you're speaking there, a wonderful blue tit has just appeared on my windowsill as if to pay homage to your cover. But Return and No Blame, your first book, was published in 1984 by Beaver Row Press. And I remember it won instant attention from critics and readers as poetry of enormous heart and conviction. But this selected as if by magic, it gathers work from 1991 to 2016, and it starts with your collection, The Man Who Was Marked by Winter. It's actually the very first collection of yours that I read as a young poet, so it's very close to my heart. I carry poems like My Love About His Business in the Barn. I love that poem and The Pattern, and they're all fantastic poems. But I was wondering, why did you choose to start your selected poems here at this point in your career? And in making a selected, it is difficult, I'd say, to decide what poems to leave in and what poems to take out.
Well, you've done a selected.
I've done it as well, I suppose. Yeah, that is true. But I'm just wondering,
did you have a rationale for it when you sat down? Did you have like an overview or a scheme, or did you just go with instinct?
Well, this is Paula now turning the question on me. I went by the poems that have always been close to me and that mattered to me, I suppose. And as we all know, in a collection, there might be only a handful of those. So that's what I did. But how did you, I suppose it was instinctive then. How did you approach it?
Well, I thought your selected was really a greatest hits. I mean, it was very sharp, elegant and focused.
Oh, thank you.
This started out as a collected poems, and then I got fed up with trying to gather all the clucking chickens and wading birds into one aviary, as it were. So I just decided, in fact, my working title, and I don't mean to be macabre, was The Rest Will Be Posthumous. Right? Getting it together. Put the collective together, and it was a good heft. I deposited it in NIVAL, the National Library for the Visual Arts, because I had written my entire kind of published corpus between the introduction of the Eighth Amendment to the Constitution, and I had lived under that, and all those poems were made under that shadow. And so I thought that was actually the best place to start. So I left them in NIVAL as a collected in that archive, because I felt that was a safe archive, because the literary archive is not safe, for who gets included and who doesn't. So I thought, okay, I'll put it in there because I feel an affinity to that. And I just then went for a good hefty selected, and that's what you have. And I put in really poems I don't think are great, but they mark something, I put in the occasional poem. One especially dear to my heart was one I was asked to write for the turning on of the Christmas lights in Buckingham Street. Tree that remembers the children of those lost to drug use. And you know that area well.
Yeah, I do actually. Yeah.
So I thought that occasional poem should go in. And it's funny because in the poem I talk about the big tree coming from the far north. And I knew that it came from Wicklow, but when I went around the area and I was saying, the tree is going up, where's it from? Oh, it's from up there near the Arctic Circle. From the far north. Oh, it'd be lovely, they bring it down. And I heard it was from Norway and Sweden, and not one person said it was from Wicklow. In my poem I made it the great tree from the far north, with its coldness and clarity. There are kind of wonky poems, and there's poems that don't, meet high literary standards and will be thrown out of workshops. But it is about my life, and it's a testament to that.
Yeah, I think that's so. It was instinctive, really. I think, and it's great that you mentioned that poem, because, as you said, it's also a place close to my heart. I taught as a teacher there for over 20 years, I think.
One who is taught by you, it just raves about you and gave them all that love and energy.
Oh, thanks, Paul. You're making me feel very good today. But I did actually want to ask you about the North Inner City, because so many of your poems were forged there, and they're full of loss and memory. And I saw recently that you said in an interview that you loved the family flat that you grew up in on the corner of Sean McDermott Street and Gardner Street. You said it was a place of deep happiness.
Well, I got language there in the north inner city. I mean, I got my grandparents go into it, and I would have spent my very early years largely reared by the grandparents in a number of different places. But with my own family, for the first, I'd say, 5 years, 6 years, there was a lot of rambling. Like, my parents went to London to work, and I would stay with my grandparents, spend time with my parents in London. I started school.
And I know you said as well, it was a tough place to grow up, but it was a place of great love. And knowing it myself, it's a great community. It's great sharing of things, of oral traditions. And I was just wondering, could you tell our listeners a little bit about the importance of your childhood there? Because it was important to your development as a poet as well, wasn't it?
It just felt like we were together. So I have that fondness, but it was a very kind of frightening childhood as well. It was very dark. It was, the area had been neglected hugely in terms of maintenance by the corporation. There were all kinds of issues. And I believe, like, trauma going back generations to the revolution, to the displacement of people. The old soldiers were there when I was a child along the streets, and and people would explain, he was in the war, these strange characters. There was a lot of violence and addiction and, stuff that was frightening. But the space with the family was nurturing and a place of creativity. And when the door closed, you felt safe.
That's good, isn't it? I know. So I know that you said earlier there that some of the wonky poems got in, but I have to say, Paula, I find that the poems are they seem effortlessly crafted. And Evan Boland, who I know you were a dear friend to her, and you must miss her so much. But she said when she first read The Man Who Was Marked by Winter, she said she marvelled at the structure. Poems which seemed to resist their confinement on the page. Each piece was fluid rather than framed, ready to spill into the next. And I think that's a wonderful quote. And I think the greatness of your poems does lie in your ability to make it look natural, to make it look easy. And Yvonne used the word spill. So I was just wondering, when you write, do the poems spill out onto the page? Are they hard won? Is it both? Could you talk a bit about craft and how important it is to you as a poet?
Well, Yvonne was an incredibly generous friend to me and to so many others. She was there, and because of her diplomatic training, she could say amazing things that would absolutely shake it all up in a way that was not offensive in the moment. I'm more of a stick my foot in my mouth type of person, but I just loved her, and I love that she reached across what might have been a divide in some ways. She really did lend a hand in, like, pulling you off the cliff edge, as well as saying, come this way, there's a road, a path. So I miss her, but the poems are there, and she has it herself in one of her lines. When you look up, I'll be there. And that's written to the coming generations. She is such a great figure.
And of course, the two of you did that book together about Dublin as well, didn't you, Paula? Which must have been great to do.
I edited it with Jodie Allen Randolph, her friend and biographer. And so that was a way of immersing myself in her specifically Dublin poems. And she had with her own photographs of Dublin. And it was lovely. She photographed things that had been in her poems, the object lessons that she saw, the way she would spin a poem out of an object, the black lace my mother gave me, the war horse, which was an image of an Oisin Kelly sculpture. And of course, her mother had been a painter, Frances Kelly. So there was lots of the visual, and many of our conversations were about painting. She said one of the most terrifying things to me, and she may have been quoting someone else, but she was talking about Sean Keating, and she said he set out to paint only what he could see, and he ended up seeing only what he could paint. As an artist, that would absolutely ring as like a warning bell to push out, to push out, to push out. So to go back to craft the long way round, I had a great teacher too in James J. Macaulay, Jim Macaulay, when I was out in Washington State in the Northwest. And he was a fantastic teacher of the craft and immersed us in, serious studies in prosody and the actual... The traditions of poetry making and how each age finds these forms to carry on the great tradition, which really predates writing itself, the writing down of it. So I had brilliant teachers. Gary Snyder came as a distinguished visiting writer, and he taught me a very important lesson. And it's always struck me as funny and ironic that I had to go and do a master's degree to learn how to breathe. But he taught us meditation in our first poetry workshop with him. So that was a really useful tool for everything, a life skill, as well as understanding that the poems are made of your own breath, and that's all you have to play with, whether you write it down or speak it out, that, you know, they're shaped in your breath. So that was important for how I find my lines. So that's, yeah, I've been so lucky in those things, and I wanted to reflect it. I do see it as a book of gratitude to those teachers as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and the friendship and encouragement of Evan Boland. It is true that a book is, it comes from so many influences and so many things that happen to you. But I remember James McCall, he's such a brilliant, brilliant teacher, because, yeah, I remember attending some workshops with him as well, a really good teacher. And a good time to breathe, as you said earlier, I think, as Gary Snyder advised you. Yeah, that's interesting, Paula. And I think we're going to move on now, because that was great to chat to you. And you'd said that you'd like to read your poem, The Ghost Song, which is towards the end of the selected. It's part of Geomantic. So I'd love to hear it, Paula. And then we can move on to the Toaster Challenge. That'll be fun.
Okay, great. The Ghost Song is... It's an example, if you like, of one of the latest literary forms, which is called the golden shovel. And it was invented by the American poet Terence Hayes to honour Gwendolyn Brooks, the great American poet. And I would have come across her when I lived in America, and her work was important. It gave me a direction. Her most famous poem is called We Real Cool, 7 of the Golden Shovel. So Terence made this new form, and all you have to do is take one line of Gwendolyn Brooks's poetry and use that line to spin the ends of your own lines, right? So the line I took was from her great poem, The Mother, which is a poem of solace to women who've had abortions. It was written against a time when, you know, they were being preached at and judged, and in her community in Chicago. So she's a great important poet in certainly in American poetry, but she's just a great compassionate heart. And the line that I spun my ghost song out of is the singers and workers that never handled the air. So, from a dream of summer, of absinthe, I woke to winter. Carol singers decked the walls of some long-lost homeland. Late-night shoppers and drowsy workers headed for the train. So the night that you died was two-faced. June, light, never far from mind, though snow fell. I handled grief like molten sunshine, learned to breathe your high, lithe ghost song from thinnest air.
Oh, thank you so much, Paula. That was Paula Meehan reading Ghost Song from As If by Magic, her selected poems just published by Daedalus Press. And so now, Paula, Peter is getting the toast ready. He's going to put the bread in the toaster, and we're going to count you in for the Toaster Challenge, where you get to talk about a book that you really love that's close to your heart. So 1, 2, 3, the toast is going down now.
So, more than concrete blocks, Dublin City's 20th century buildings and their stories. So I'm going to talk about the first 2 volumes in this series, and the 3rd volume is forthcoming sometime, we all hope soon. But these are 3 mega books about the built environment of 20th century Dublin, but they're compiled for a general reader. They're hefty. I weighed the 2 I have, and they're 4.5 pounds. 2 kilos in the new measurements. And they're lore books for anyone who loves Dublin, who is interested in its architecture, both its glories and its disasters. And for someone like me who grew up in the city centre and who has lived most of her life in this city, it's a mine of information and inspiration. Ellen Rowley, the series editor for these volumes, is visionary, meticulous, a generous-hearted editor. Also, it's a kind of a mehel because they use the work of many scholars, researchers. They go into the archives, they have new photographs of all these buildings. The first volume covers 1900 to 1940, so it covers the revolution and the new buildings of the young state, the Free State. Volume 2 is 1940 to 1972, and that kind of covers part of my own lifetime as a child of the 50s. I'd have seen some of those buildings go up, and I've seen them fall down, as in the case of, say, Ballymun, which went up in my lifetime and came down in my lifetime. The books were commissioned by Charles Duggan, the Heritage Officer for Dublin City Council. Many of the buildings actually are the same age as myself, and some of them are in a much better state of preservation. Now, they say you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but I want to talk about the cover of the second volume. There's a young man standing near to where the Loop Line Bridge, the railway bridge, crosses the River Liffey. Behind him is Liberty Hall, and the scaffolding at the northeast of that tower signals it is under construction. The young fella is Mick Foran, who is married to my great friend Kay. The man who took the photo has passed on to the great trade union shindig in the sky, Stano Burnett, a childhood pal of Mick Foran, and they're both from corporation buildings, which are gone now, down in the old, my own ancestral zone of the Monto. Stano used Mick's old box brownie to take the shot, and the two young lads, they're only young teenagers, the great symbol and expression of working class aspiration behind them, the new Liberty Hall, brave enough to try for first Dublin skyscraper, modernist, unashamedly contemporary, replacing Larkin and Connolly's old Liberty Hall, rat-ridden, damp and long past fit for even its original purpose, which was actually a theatre. Though when you think of some of the high drama enacted in that Tower of Liberty in a century that has seen both the struggle for the right to organise, the growth of the trade union movement, and the disempowerment of those unions in the age of 0-hour contracts. Yeah, I've had 26 addresses in this city. My last two addresses total 28 happy and settled and fairly productive years. But before that, I was hither and thither and yonder, and sometimes had no address at all. Behind Ita Kelly's sofa in York Street on a foam mattress was my address for a while. My engagement with the institutional buildings in these books ranges from the sublime to the ridiculous. Cherry Orchard Fever Hospital. 3 months I spent there as a child watching the stars wheeling across the window pane. Cumberland Street Dole office, where I had a hard job persuading them to put me down as anything other than an unskilled labourer. They wouldn't recognise the term cultural worker, which I was trying to get them to put on the form. The Berkeley Library in Trinity, where I immersed myself in the ancient writers and their dramas and mythologies, where I studied history, but certainly not the history of my own community. Bus Aras. I love Bus Aras and its curly roof, where many forays out into the countryside of this beautiful island began. The Ablana Theatre downstairs in Bus Aras, watching Rosaline Lenihan as a young political satirist in her wicked reviews, the American Embassy, where I had to plead my case in 1981 for a student visa to take up a teaching fellowship, which was initially refused, and they would never say why. Maybe I was on a list from anti-Vietnam War activities when I was a student. Maybe I just didn't look right, who knows, because I never found out. So these 2 volumes are there, and they're a framework of memory and scholarship that amplifies and informs my own sense of my hometown. I think every set of readers will have their own journey through the streets and the buildings of this book. So I think it should be really, think about it as a major investment. Anyone who lives in Dublin, who loves architecture and the way a building grows organically, and also they're all the signposts to the brown envelope brigades and the collusion between the politics and the developers. It's fantastic as a book of sources. So I'm going to just rave about it and urge anyone to get one for Christmas, especially coming up. More Than Concrete Blocks, Dublin City's 20th Century Buildings and Their Stories, Volume 1 and 2, £4.50. £4.50. So either lug it home from the newly reopened independent bookstores or get it online.
Good on you, Paula Meehan. You've definitely plugged that. So the toast is burnt, but who cares? It sounds like an amazing book. Actually, just recently in the Irish Literary Supplement, I saw Ruth McManus saying that this is a book which should be on the shelf of every home in the city. And I love that it sounds, I haven't read it, I'm bursting to get it, that it talks about the city as a layered, complex place. It makes links between Dublin's buildings, as you said, political, social, cultural, economic histories. It sounds amazing. So that was Paula Meehan talking, as she said, about Dublin City's 20th century buildings and their stories, published by Four Courts Press, edited so creatively and passionately by Ellen Rowley, an amazing architectural and cultural historian. Before I go, I would like to urge listeners to consider purchasing not just this book, but if you haven't already, a copy of Paula Meehan's As If by Magic selected poems, available to get from Daedalus Books. And it's a book not just for Christmas. I think it's one for life. And as usual, details on both books will be available on our website, booksforbreakfast.buzzsprout.com. Thanks, Paula.
Thank you. See you.
And that concludes our double bumper Christmas special. We hope you enjoyed that. And thanks again to Paula Meehan and to Tara Bergin and to all our guest poets. And hope you enjoy the season that's in it. And we will be back in the new year with more Books for Breakfast. And our first guest will be Philip Coleman, who'll be talking to us about John Berryman's letters.
And Peter, would you like to tell everyone about the details of the podcast if they'd like to listen again?
Well, you can subscribe at all the usual sources, Google and Apple and so on. And if you want to check out the notes that go along with this podcast, you can go to booksforbreakfast.buzzsprout.com. And yeah, so
we'll be back again next Thursday morning. We'll have the toast on, we'll have the kettle boiling, we will have more books to discuss, and we're looking forward to having you here. So goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.